I was in church the other day and I was like thinking in my head, I'm not a sinner.
What do you guys know?
Yeah.
How dare you call me a sinner?
It's like self-inquiry. It's unlayering who you are.
Yeah. The modern day gurus have become psychologists, which is actually a frightening thought.
I was not into girls when I was 5.
It'd be weird if you were.
Super horny 5 years. When in reality, there's something behind that all, which is the self, which can be uncovered.
His whole theory is that the unconscious actually leads every action that you take in your entire life, basically.
Does that make sense to you?
Bro, you sound like a crazy person.
Alright guys, welcome to our podcast. In this podcast, this episode specifically, we're going to speak from anything from spirituality, philosophy, psychology, and we're just going to get down to what we think it is and how our experience has shaped us. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think generally the way that this ideal concept came to be is that Tim and I have quite a lot of engaged conversations around spirituality, and we both had some quite unique and profound experiences, and we just thought it'd be an interesting or engaging idea to just converse and actually record some of it to see if we can't kind of hash out or refine or build or create something and learn and grow and then sort of share that as well. And I guess this sort of first video or this first episode or installment or whatever you want to call this, we're just going to go really kind of broad and just sort of explain and explore spirituality as a theme, as a concept and as a construct, and some of our personal experiences within that, and just sort of roll and see where that goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. And hopefully this like sort of is relevant or helpful to other spiritual seekers. And if not spiritual seekers, maybe people who don't know about spirituality who are hearing this and going, oh yeah, this is actually making sense to my experience. But yeah, I should say my name's Tim. I'm 26 and I've been living with Luke for the past 6 months in this apartment here in the Northern Beaches. And we sort of met through an online platform. Oh, not Tinder.
We met through Tinder. We like to have... No, I'm joking. I won't say that. Yeah, we met through flatmates. And just happened to kind of find or whatever, we just seemed to align in values, and we met and we're just like, well, there's a really engaged conversation here. And that's why we're now married and having 2 children. I'm just kidding, we're not. But we...
De facto.
Yeah.
Soon. What is it, 6 months, a year?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, man, I can't wait for that first child to come along, and and the white picket fence soon after that. But yeah, like in essence, we just sort of found this kind of congruence and alignment, and a deep love and exploration of spirituality. And my name is Luke. I sort of bit about me. I sort of been seeking and exploring spirituality for probably about 7 years now. And I've been sort of really quite proactively engaged in the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, and I've gone through sort of, influential or unique experiences in my part, or the way that I see them anyway, at least. But also I think that experiences that a lot of people go through that can be quite relatable. A bit of sort of my niche or line of spirituality is kind of coming from, I frame it in a psycho-spiritual sort of lens. So my background and discipline in a formal or professional sense is that I'm a psychotherapist, and I've also trained in sort of the healing arts, and I've studied Reiki and different sort of healing modalities as well. So I kind of come from a lens of the amalgamation of a sort of contemporary spirituality sense and a new age postmodernistic sense, which is also backed by contemporary sort of psychological frameworks, particularly from a Jungian lens, and other sort of ancient traditions that have kind of gone along with that as well. But that's sort of my flavor and line of the spiritual thing anyway, a bit about me. So
yeah, which is super fascinating, because a little bit about my background in spirituality is much more through that Eastern philosophy or Eastern spirituality, whether that be, mainly Hinduism and the Vedic tradition, which I've spoke your ear off about, and Buddhism and Taoism. I'd say those 3 have had a huge influence on my life. So I've been I should say I got into this spirituality, I don't know, what is it, a dimension?
Experience, reality.
Yeah,
Phenomenon.
this phenomenon about 2 years ago, and what I would describe as maybe like an awakening of sorts, a spiritual awakening, or at least a spiritual experience, which has led me on a quest essentially, and has ignited a fire within me to figure out what this is, and if there is this, transcendent dimension, non-physical, metaphysical dimension, spiritual dimension of life, and what is that? So that's led me to get into all sorts of Eastern religions, spiritual philosophies, psychologies, different practices like meditation, and just a really deep dive into the Vedic culture, because that's where I find the most overlap between my experience and the experience of this tradition. So one pivotal book that I stumbled upon was the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the main Hindu texts. That was just sitting in my closet for like 5 years. I got given it by a monk in Manly, like 5 years prior. And then as I had my spiritual awakening, I would call it, I went on like a rampage to figure out what it was searching online, was following a few YouTubers who were speaking about similar experiences that I was experiencing, like who am I, what is the self, what is the reality, where am I, are we in a simulation? That's sort of bordering on like mentally
am I in the
ill.
Matrix?
Yeah.
Red pill, blue pill.
Yeah, which I always thought prior to that was a bit wacky. Whereas now it's sort of, I can empathize with it.
Yeah, like before they were kind of space cadets.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
I'm lumped in with the crazy bunch as well.
Yeah, we're one of the crazies.
Yeah.
We've integrated the insanity within us. Yeah.
Exactly. So I read that book and I was like, damn, I love this stuff. And each page was speaking to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to follow this. So I have met Luke, and Luke's opened my eyes to a whole bunch of, what do you call it? Psycho-spiritual? Yeah, like Carl Jung and like individuation and all these theories that I would never have thought about, which has actually broadened my lens entirely. And actually, you've brought me a much more contemporary version of spirituality, which is really good for me, because I've got that ancient...
Yeah, and you give me a bit more ancient stuff.
Yeah, so that's where we cross over. But would you want to add anything to that? Or
No, not really. And I guess, I think that we're just going to frame this conversation around the exploration of spirituality in a broad sense and some subcategories around that. And I guess just trying to have like a relatable conversation, that you can kind of maybe have a similar resonance with, or be in a similar vein with, or just sort of maybe find interesting. That's the hope for it anyway. Yeah. But part of it as well that we were talking about is that we wanted to have conversations in which we grow and learn through and in. So kind of hopefully in this you'll observe or witness us actually trying to hash out things that we're trying to understand. I think that's kind of the point of this, is that we do sort of educate and learn and grow as we have conversations. So to be able to witness this or share that experience, it's kind of hopefully part of this as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we're still seeking. We're by no means realized.
Exactly. Yeah. We are no Buddhas in our own rights. Well, maybe in some senses, but like we're
certainly on the path.
Yeah, we're on the path. We're humble students and seekers that have come across breadcrumbs of wisdom that we're trying to pull apart and understand truth.
Truth, wisdom, spirituality. So with that being said, Luke...
segue. What a segue. Fuck yeah, I love that.
What is your understanding of spirituality as a concept?
Yeah.
What is spirituality to you?
It's always a fascinating question to sort of... It can be quite a diverse or eclectic question or loaded question to answer. And I think that the reality of it is that spirituality is such a subjective experience. I think that there are certain relevant objective truths or truisms that exist throughout reality, certain maybe laws or morals or standards or principles or happenings, happenstances. But to me, spirituality, in how I see it or how I engage with it, is the pursuit of integrating and understanding the abstract or the metaphysical and the transcendent as in my human form in which I am, in which I also choose to say that I'm a spiritual being in human form, that both of those realities coexist and coincide. But I am on a pursuit to amalgamate and pull in the two ends of that. So I'm trying to understand the mythic, the abstract, and make practical or make lived, and through that experience try and attempt to become more whole or have a more holistic understanding of myself and existence in a certain sense.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you frame that? Like, what's your...
Well, no, that makes sense. I think, like, what stood out to me was, like, a spirit having a human experience. So, like, I mean, you said transcendent dimension. Is that similar? Would you call that the same thing as what religions would call God? Is that the same thing? Or is there a difference between...
Yeah. I think that, the transcendent dimension is everything that kind of, I suppose, that goes beyond the liminal and limited sense of the more physical reality, I suppose. The sort of more mythic or abstract, or as Jung would put, like the unconscious, like delving more into the unconscious and subconscious realms of our psyches or of consciousness, that I believe exists and permeates through all things. So God, anything, God archetypes, mythic structures, and all that kind of stuff kind of sits within the transcendent and or the abstract, basically.
Yeah.
In a sense, I don't know.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, like, I mean, the whole nature of this topic is, like, there is a large, like, portion of this which is a mystery and undescribable, which is why it's so fascinating. It's like, so what is this dimension? This maybe, like, higher consciousness or higher states of consciousness, or this different reality. So I think one thing that you have to acknowledge as a spiritual seeker is that you may not find the full answer in this lifetime. But I like what you were saying about this human the spirit having a human experience. It sort of suggests that the body, the ego, the mind, and the spirit are all 4 different things.
Yeah.
So, is that in your experience as well?
The element of the 4 aspects of self.
Yeah, the human experience having multiple layers, and us. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think, like, sort of from my lens or formation of understanding spirituality, the more that I've kind of delved into it, the more practical and pragmatic it's become, or the more certain spheres of it or categories evolve. Of course, it's always kind of a elusive, more mythic, abstract thing of sort of like trying to catch air with your hand in a certain sense.
Yeah.
And the only way to really, I think, appreciate or discern spiritual truth or spiritual wisdom is through more archetypal or
what is that?
Like through almost like through myth or lore, or symbols, basically. Like Jung talks very much of symbols and how symbols seem to, there's like threads of symbols that permeate through time and through generations and such, but they're all pointing at the same sort of truths or understandings or fundamental knowledges that exist within our experiences. And that the symbols or abstracts or stories attempt to understand or make sense of this. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much vastness that we're like, how do you, like, what words can only come so close and far to, you know what I mean? Like, to actually explain and encapsulate that. But symbols and images or art or even can be ways of trying to, or story to explain poetry. Like, I think the good spiritual teachers always use like metaphors and, you know what I mean, like analogies to explain it,
the unexplainable. Which is why I think when from my experience being brought up as like a proper Catholic Christian, I never understood, like, you're told to worship God and we're sinners, but it's like,
Tim is a sinner, by the way, just saying.
I was in church the other day and I was like thinking in my head, I'm not a sinner.
What do you guys know? How dare you call me a sinner?
I was like, I'm not a sinner. But I don't think that word does any good. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, like,
what is sin?
Yeah, what is sin? And also, like religion just beating into people, and that's why people turn away and have this like adverse reaction to the word God, but we're never told what God is. I think that would take a lifetime study to realize what it is. And one, on a theoretical level, and two, on an experiential level.
Yeah.
Because I do believe there is what people describe as higher states of consciousness is actually getting closer to God.
Yeah.
And that process is actually it's like it's unlayering. It's like self-inquiry. It's unlayering who you are.
Yeah.
So this body is ever changing and is perishable. Therefore, it's a part of me. It's not my essence, my nature, my spirit, or myself. My mind is changing every few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or on a broader scale, from childhood to boyhood to adulthood, my values are obviously changed. I was not into girls when I was 5.
That'd be weird if you were.
Super horny 5-year-old. But that's what I'm trying to say. The mind is constantly changing, so it's not really reliable as an indicator on who you are.
No.
And then the ego is, you develop it through ideologies, philosophies, education. This is who I am. I'm Tim, Davey. I'm in this body. I'm a 26-year-old. I'm a male. And you attach yourself to all these things that...
labels.
Yeah. When in reality, there's something behind that all, which is the self, which can be uncovered.
Yeah.
Uncovering all that muck.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what the spiritual process is. Getting to your true essence and actually trying to get past the mind, get past the ego, get past the body, get past even memory, and trying to tap into that transcendent, eternal part of you, the self, which sounds very abstract, but
no.
I'm sure there's a process of, there's science of spirituality, science of yoga. I'm speaking from, again, Eastern Hindu lens, which can uncover that. And does that make sense to you?
Bro, you sound like a crazy person. No. Dude, 100%.
That process.
Yeah, what old mate, who I will probably literally refer to every 5 minutes of for the rest of my entire life, old mate, Jungie boy, had not actually the formal quote. It turns out actually when you look at the quote, he didn't say these words directly, but there's like iterations of how the quote came to be in this more sort of filtered down sense or a more direct sense. And the quote is, or that he framed in the actual macro quote of it, was that until you make the unconscious conscious, that it will lead your life and you'll mistake it as fate. So so it's like to integrate, like you're saying, the unconscious, the true unconsciousness.
Yeah.
And he believes that there's like the collective unconscious, which is the wisdom or the happenings or the whateverness that exists under all things or through all things. That until you understand that and its relationship and interrelationship with you, or intra-relationship almost in the sense, you'll just be like going and buzzing along. You'll be like on autopilot all the time. And you have no idea why.
Unconscious.
Yeah. The unconscious that comes up and out and will just dictate. Like, his whole theory is that the unconscious actually leads every action that you take in your entire life, basically, in a sense. So it's like conditioning and trauma or experiences that you go through, everything just gets stored in the unconscious. So it's like the memory bank, the hard drive.
And you're not conscious of it.
Well, you may or may not be conscious of it, but he's saying that until you make, like, you know, like you have childhood experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah. Which shape you.
Yeah, as like a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, or a teenager or whatever.
Yeah. That,
you know, you for whatever reason, for example, say you like candles. I'm looking at a candle right now, right?
Yeah.
You just have some sort of hyperfixation of you absolutely love candles and you can't seem to explain why. It's like maybe when you were 6 years old, your mum came into your room every night and lit a candle, and there was a really nice bonding experience.
Right.
So that actually would demonstrate a sort of sense of an unconscious phenomena that you weren't aware of, like something that you weren't aware of in your experience that's actually driving your love of candles.
Damn.
So he basically, it's like to understand everything within the unconscious. It's like, can you do that with an entire lifetime? Probably not.
Damn.
But like
every impression on the mind.
That formulated the ego or constructed the self.
Right.
And he's just saying like, well, how did the self come to be? How did you form? How did the ego form and come to be? Well, let's look at the developmental nature, because that's what psychotherapy does.
That's proper self-inquiry.
Deep self-inquiry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is my question. And this is where our different paths have led us to some overlap and some difference.
To a climax.
Climax. There's like that psychological psychotherapy self-inquiry, which is delving into history.
Yeah.
Delving into past patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
Linking things through years.
And that's what it does, man. It like formulates patterns as series and sequences of all this stuff of an individual's experience over time.
Right.
And that's why you get like so many different modalities and approaches of like the CBD approach and the this approach and the ACT approach and the DBT and the, like all
cognitive
the T's.
behavioral therapy.
Yeah, or like your Gestalt flavors or your whatever. Like
I pronounce that.
Yeah, it's some German thing anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that. It's like trying to patternize the happenings and then how to navigate the happenings with a framework.
Right.
So that's literally what you're saying.
Yeah, which is super fascinating. So then, like that's the almost Western
yes
model of spirituality.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Devoid of religion.
Yeah. Dude, 100%. I'm very much of the belief that contemporary psychology and psychotherapy has started to fill the void of the guru and the true original OG spiritual traditions that we have in our world.
Wow.
Like I think that like the modern day gurus have become psychologists, which is actually a frightening thought in my experience, because a lot of them are so actual devoid of the spiritual dimension that they
that's the thing.
almost like clinically reject it.
Really?
Which is like not all of them, right? Like a lot of people, like don't get me wrong, I'm like generalizing.
Yeah.
But
it's viewed with skepticism.
Yeah, there's like hesitation, for example. Like you could like to talk too deeply of the abstract. Like for example, that in a contemporary and where we are with psychology, in correlation to spirituality, if you start like Jung is still very much on the fringe.
Right.
Like you start talking about Jung stuff and be like, I don't know, the unconscious archetypes and shit like that.
Yeah.
People still, there's like a level of like hesitation. There's like interest, but there's like hesitation still. So it's just like, well, if you're going to be hesitant about the unconscious and the transpersonal, you're kind of missing parts of the pie here.
Yes. Damn. That's super fascinating. And Jungian, that Jungian model came out, what, 19...
Early, not like, 1930, 40, 50, something like that. Sort of.
Yeah.
He died in like, was it 1960s, something like that? 1970s?
What's interesting about, like, there's parallels between the world that you're coming from, the world that I'm coming from, in the sense that there's heavy self-inquiry. And actually the Jnana yogis, they're the ones who seek Brahman or God through knowledge. And they have this process of elimination called neti. Not this. So I'm not this body. I'm not this mind. I'm not this ego. I'm not this memory. I'm not this trauma. Those are things that have happened to me. That's how they view it, which is the uncovering, unlayering, like an onion. You're taking off layers and layers and layers to find that essence, that true essence. So that sort of sounds like similar to what Jung was getting at in terms of discovering your true self through understanding your trauma. I think the difference between the yogic circles and the psychological circles is that the yogic circles see the mind as almost false. Unreal. And the ego is unreal. Whereas the Jungian model takes it as a real thing, tries to understand it and declutter it and free up space and understand it, as opposed to look at it pessimistically as it not being real. Yeah,
definitely. Like psychology has like, they look at like the physiological effects of the brain, linking of how that influences thought and like the nervous system and how that, you know what I mean?
It's almost more scientific.
Yeah, it's like, but I think, Jung definitely was very much like if you said to him like, your brain governs your thoughts or whatever, it would be like, no, like, not really. Like
your brain governs your thoughts.
It's more like like what exists outside of that kind of has a bigger influence.
Yeah. Maybe Jung was enlightened.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, and this is where our different paths have led us to some overlap and some difference.
To a climax.
Climax.